Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Sunday live stream. I'm joined, as ever, by my friend Jerry V. Hall. Jerry, how you doing today on Sunday?
I'm wonderful and loving my life here in Costa Rica, and actually excited about where the directions of the markets are headed.
Yeah, me too. I mean, it's kind of flat right now, but I mean, hopefully it'll get better. I see you've got your Post-it sticky notes across your computer there in the background. Looks like you're doing something.
Yeah, those are my tasks, and as I complete them, I take them off, and yeah.
That's what a professional looks like. The more organized you are, sometimes the more you're not doing. But when you got everything all over the place, that's when things get done. Anyhow, speaking of when things get done, we're stuck at 95K, and this is pretty much it. But you know, it is interesting that we were able to hold everything. We're taking a look at like 10-year yields and treasuries, and they're inching up 4.24%, somewhere around there. Correct me in the comment section. When those types of things happen, you see a little bit more of a risk off. And so far, Bitcoin's been doing pretty well. And today, what we're talking about is the EU declaring financial war on Trump and tariffs. And before we get into all that stuff, I just want to remind everybody why we're all here into Bitcoin primarily and digital assets. I post this today because I think it's important to kind of like give us some context and remind ourselves before we move forward. This is why I buy Bitcoin every day. This is why I buy more when the price goes down. This is me. I can't give a financial advice, but this is really what it comes down to. As long as the government keeps doing this, I will keep buying. And actually, I'll just show you this. So this is the purchasing power of the dollar in 2015, $1,000. And in 2015 for Bitcoin, $1,000, $1,000. So how did that shape up over the last 10 years? Well, we can see Jerome Powell and what I assume is Satoshi. Just kidding, it's not him. But we can see over time that the purchasing power of the dollar goes down dramatically, and the purchasing power of Bitcoin goes up. So I know, like right now, if this is your first cycle and it feels kind of weird, because you're like, man, everybody said this is going to be like the best thing of all time. Again, it's all a numbers game, and it's all a time. And I just want to remind everybody that if you think this is great where we're at, I mean, look at 2015 to today, and where do you think we're going to go in the next, I don't know, 2, 6, 10 years? Anyhow, Jerry, what are your thoughts on this one?
I love this visual, Rob. I came to this space because I was 50 years old and realized I knew nothing about money. Right, I retired with a bag of money, and I quickly learned in my first year of retirement that bag of money was not going to last me till I was 80 years old, and I want to live till at least I'm 80, right? And so, monetary policy affects all of us. None of us can escape it. And the only ones that seem to, prosper are those that get out of the currency game and get into the asset game.
Yeah, this is the big thing because, and this is anywhere. This is everywhere. It doesn't matter if you're in
every country on the planet. Every
country on the planet. They're going to keep debasing the currency, and this is where it goes. So you must get into assets, whatever those are. If you're into precious metals, great, me too. If you're into real estate, fantastic, me as well. If you're into equities, okay, I don't have that many. But if you're into that stuff, fantastic. Just use your dollars or your euros or your renminbis or whatever for what they're designed for, which is to purchase assets and move from there. But also, I wanted to go over this real quick just to go through the numbers, because it says in 2015, $1,000 would then equal, what is it, 400,000? 414,000 in 2025. And I'm like, is that true? So let's just shoot over to Ben's website. And you can sign up for this, as you all know. But this one's free. The Bitcoin DCA simulation, this is just fun to show your friends and whatever else. But let's say that you did a lump sum of $1,000. This is 2026. Hold on. Let's go back to 2015. And it really does make a difference. Like, let's say you did it on January 1st. What would it be worth today? Only 300,000.
3.17 Bitcoin.
Yeah, but isn't that amazing? 3.17. But okay, let's do this. Let's go to the 8th of January. 3.61 Bitcoin, 343. Okay, now we're getting somewhere. How about the 15th? Okay, now we're talking. Look at that, man, Jerry, look at that. You had a 4.5 Bitcoin going back then. That's why, like, I think in like 10 years, people are gonna look back at this and go, you've got a half a Bitcoin or you've got 0.1 Bitcoin. That's crazy. Like, yeah, look at that. Don't wrench attack me. So, yeah, we can see that this actually does play out. But what does this mean short term? Not too much. You got to stick around. And unfortunately for that, you're going to have a rocky road, just like what we're going to lay out today. But don't worry. We're going to go over a 2-week plan given to us from Donald Trump himself. So this is from Watch Your Bureau. Looks like the European Union to suspend trade deals with U.S. following President Trump's tariff threats. And we talked about that yesterday. And of course, I put in my 2 cents and everybody says, you're a moron. I says, oh, no, they're going to stop trading with the richest country on the planet that has the highest amount of consumers. What a shame. First of all, I get it that our GDP is like 123%. Yes, I understand all that. But if you just take a look at as far as like the per capita spending, America, I hate to break it to everybody, is massive. Per capita spending is 55,000 versus 25,000 for the major EU nations. And of course, we go through all that. I'm not saying that, you know, this is like the best of all time. I'm just saying, you know, I don't know if this is a great idea for the EU. And I think this is just another bargaining chip that will get laid out. And speaking of that, this was put together by Kobishi Letter. And it's a great X account to follow, especially as they lay out some great stuff like this, because over 2 weeks, this is happening again and again and again, where tariff information comes out from Trump. Then you've got the countries reacting or overreacting. Then you've got Trump coming back and saying, well, maybe we'll do something. And then you got the heads of state come out and go, well, maybe we'll come together. So whatever you think is going to happen, this is usually how it all plays out. I think it's important to go over this. So Kobishi said, we spent 12 months analyzing every tariff development. President Trump announced new tariffs. And if you're, just to catch you up to speed, if you didn't watch yesterday, there's going to be a 10% tariff on Denmark, Norway, Sweden, France, Germany, UK, Netherlands, and Finland, beginning in like a week or so on February 1st. And the reason is because they're saying, like, we want the acquisition of Greenland to go through. I'm not here to say if that's a great idea or not. It's a geopolitical issue, whatever. Tariffs will increase to 25% on June 1st and will not be lifted until a deal is reached on Greenland. So you heard this, and then pretty soon we're going to talk about Macron and what he said and why they declared financial war. But let's go through this real quick. The playbook itself. Here's the step-by-step, and I think it's playing out yet again perfectly. So Trump posts a message signaling tariffs, check. Later that same day, he announces a larger tariff, 25% plus, check. President Trump doubles down the tariff threat to apply pressure while markets are closed, which on Saturday, check, check, check. Over the weekend, the countries targeted by the new tariffs typically respond publicly, check, 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 check. This is French President Macron, as he comes out and said, look, here's what we're going to do. We're going to give you guys the anti-coercion instrument. In a significant escalation following President Trump's tariff threats regarding Greenland, French President Macron is urging the EU to deploy anti-coercion instrument. This would mark the first time the EU has utilized this powerful mechanism, as it will severely restrict American access to the EU markets, specifically targeting U.S. tech firms and blocking U.S. banks from EU procurement contracts, which is kind of interesting because this is such a great picture. They were so happy back then. What happened? Anyhow, Jerry, before we go on, what's your thoughts on all this stuff? Where are we going? Is this a good move? Not so good.
I'll be honest, I don't know if it's a good move or a bad move. What I do know historically, prior to World War II, the United States used tariffs as a way to adjust ratios between trade with other countries. And before World War I, it was the primary lever in how we equalized cost to benefit ratios with other countries, right? Because there was always the balance of how would foreign trade affect national businesses that were manufacturing in the US, right? Remember, like, you and I are old enough to remember that when we were children, there was that transition from American manufacturing of electronics like televisions and radios centered in the United States by companies like RCA, transitioning over to companies in Japan like Sony, right? We may have not been cognizant of it, but it was happening in that late 60s, 70s, and especially in the early 80s, that transition of exchanging manufacturing and becoming a consumer, not a manufacturer, right? But there was a time where the US relied on tariffs and there was no income tax.
I don't remember, but I've read stories about this, which is amazing.
So did I. My grandparents told me about things like this.
Yeah.
And how up in arms they were that their income tax had to basically subsidize the US government because tariffs weren't bringing revenue into the government, so they had to use taxation on the population. See, tariffs are a tax, but not on us, on somebody else. So I think if you're a US citizen, you have to ask yourself, do you want to pay the taxes for these things, or would you like somebody else to?
Right. And then, of course, right now,
understand where that balance is.
Yeah. And I remember I remember reading about this, World War I, World War II, and somewhere in between. There was no taxation. There was no taxes. It was levied by tariffs. Then, of course, the government comes in and says, you know what, because of these wars, we're just going to tax you just a little bit. But don't you worry, we're going to change it. And then all of a sudden, that 1% to 2% became 10%. And that 10% became, that's the minimum, now we're going to go 20%. And it always just keeps increasing. It's the same thing that we talked about with the Clarity Act yesterday, where we had Mike Novogratz talk about, like, let's just get this through and then we'll fix it later. It's never going to happen. The government's not going to go back and say, you know what, whoopsie, made a little mistake. Let's go back and fix that. They're like, you know what, sounds good. Let's keep doing that. Anyhow, that's what's...
Hey, do you remember the first principle of sound money being wiped off as a law in 1972 temporarily by Nixon when he took us off the gold standard? Temporarily taking us off the gold standard in 1972.
Jerry, you're a real gem. Thanks you for reminding that. Of course, now here we are and we're stuck. Anyhow, before we get too deep into those woods, which is a great story, here's the playbook. So we know this is what's happening. Here's what's going to happen coming up. On Sunday evening, which should be now. Well, not now. I think we got till, 4 or 5 hours, I guess. 6 p.m. Eastern time when futures reopen, stock market futures drop an initial emotional reaction to the tariff headlines. Jim Cramer may be right. He said that it looks like we're going to have a drop in the markets because of this, perhaps. Monday and Tuesday, President Trump continues applying pressure publicly, so expect some tweets and people talking about it over on Truth Social. Wednesday, dip buyers step in and spark a relief rally. Move often fades. This is typically where smart money begins buying because people come in, have a relief rally, then it crashes down. Then the smart money come in and just scoop it all up and go, thanks. And they wait for the next week. 1 week later, President Trump posts that discussions are underway. He's working towards a solution. Doesn't this sound familiar? With leaders of the other countries. Then next Sunday, 6 p.m. Eastern, futures open sharply higher as optimism returns, but it fades again. Monday, things open. Senior administration officials such as Dissent or like Lutnick will come out and say on live television that everything's going to be okay. We're working on a deal. And then over the next 2 to 4 weeks, some people in the Trump administration, they tease the progress. And then all of a sudden, good news, we'll get a trade deal. So that's pretty much the 2 week, roughly 3 week playbook. So just like that kind of come about. And it keeps happening over and over again. Jerry, thoughts on this one?
You know, I find myself just in awe at the sheer speed and volume of different things that are coming out of our current administration here in the United States. And I'm kind of taking a being patient observer approach, right?
Yeah.
Trying not to get too opinionated on any one thing. You know, I don't really have any big opinions on Greenland or Venezuela or Cuba or this thing with the UAE or tariffs or this. I'm kind of trying to stay focused on the things that I can control. And this seems at times, Rob, so much bigger than me.
Well said,
I mean? So I
Jerry.
just kind of go.
Let it happen. Let it happen. It's like we're always saying here, the sphere of control. What can you change? What can you not change? You can't change any of that. Of course, we can just play the game. I'm personally waiting for that monstrous dip if this really does come through. because then ratios go down. We've got risk factors going down. And when that happens, what do I got to do? Very simply, this is the thing I should have done in 2022, but I screwed up, which is buy more Bitcoin. We'll see if I can continue on with that streak. Anyhow, let us know what you think about that in the comments section. And then let's, I want to go over this quickly because I think this is going to be more of an issue as time goes on. And it's talking about quantum computing and Bitcoin. So me and Jerry, we went over this last time, and it was a long thing that we talked about, and it got very in the weeds. But I just want to go over this because I think people are going to hear about quantum computing killing Bitcoin, especially because of this guy. So this just came out 2 or 3 days ago. I can't remember. But this is Chris Wood, Global Head of Equity Strategy for Jefferies Global. And Jefferies Global Blank is 64 billion assets under management. Pretty big, pretty big. And he himself had 10% allocated to Bitcoin for his master fund. And this is what he would recommend to clients. And he got in on December 17, 2020 at 22,000 Bitcoin. So if you got in before Chris, congratulations, you outdid all the geniuses out there. But what's happened today, or the last 2 days, is Chris has said, I'm out of all my Bitcoin positions, and I'm recommending everybody get out because of quantum computing is going to break Bitcoin. And again, we talked about this before, so I just want to go over this. I mean, Chris is probably a very smart guy, but there's just some little nuances. So this is what's going to break Bitcoin. So the question you have to ask is, well, other people are talking about it. Should I just sell now and wait for it to break and then buy it back? You could, and it's not financial advice. The question is, when will it happen? How does this actually affect you, this quantum computing device? First, you got to break this down into 2 things. I'm going to try to make this as simple as possible. There's a physical qubit, there's a logical qubit. A physical qubit essentially is like a soap bubble, and the logical qubit is essentially what we bring together that actually makes this device work. So what's a physical qubit? This thing right here. A physical qubit is like, it's very interesting. It's a superconducting electrical circuit. It's a trapped ion. It's an electrical spin. It's a photon. It's a defect in a crystal. Essentially the soap bubble. And that's what's in those things, which makes things, they look so interesting. And we can get thousands of these, but you can't build a reliable computer or quantum computing out of popping bubbles. So if anybody says like, oh, this has this much qubits and this much power, they're full of it. They don't know what they're talking about. This is the only thing that matters, the logical qubit. So when you're talking about this, well, how many of these logical qubits do we actually have we made so far in the world? 56, or excuse me, those are the physical. The logical ones are 12, and then 1. That's all we've made so far with all of these physical qubits. Again, the soap bubbles that are very temporary. For these logical qubits, the only thing that can actually make this work, we've made like 12, 1, mostly 0. And if you take a look at this chart over time, you've got 12, 4, 28, 0. Actually, I don't know how they got 28. That's Microsoft. So how powerful are these computers? Well, when they do get them to run and work, Google's Willow chip solved a complex mathematical benchmark in 5 minutes, which would have taken the best supercomputers 10 septillion years. Jerry, before I go on, when you're hearing this, do you think to yourself, holy crap, that's definitely going to break Bitcoin?
No, I don't think that at all.
Okay.
I think the advancement in the technology will present a threat, but the safeguarding against the threat is already underway. So therefore, when the technology gets to the point where it could break Bitcoin as Bitcoin stands now, there will be a fix or a patch for Bitcoin that creates quantum resistance. Right. But just like when the atom bomb was being developed, in conjunction with that, we were developing thyroid medications to help mitigate the effects of radiation poisoning. So what I'm saying is, for every advancement that poses an existential threat, there is also time and energy and research going to safeguard against that threat being detrimental to the thing that it's a threat against.
Right. And it's the big thing about how fast can we do this advancement and how much time is it going to take. And then, of course, if you're talking about quantum computing, this is the basic thing that I get, which is, hey, man, if quantum computing is so powerful, like we just took a look at, who cares about Bitcoin? What about the bank accounts? What about the nuclear codes? Come on, bro. You're not thinking. But that's not how quantum computing works, unfortunately. Quantum computing, in a classical computer, you're just dealing with zeros and ones. Quantum qubit, again, logical versus physical, they're doing them both at once. So if it can use zeros and ones all together, and it can do these quadrillion or septillion amount of transactions, or excuse me, of computational power per second, doesn't that mean that it can definitely break into your bank account, or it can definitely take those nuclear codes? Well, no. Jerry, what happens if you try to log into your, I don't know, Wells Fargo account after like 3 or 4 times? What happens?
Cut off.
You get cut off, right? And then because if you had as much time as you could and it would just give it to you, of course, that's what would happen. But of course, with banks, with any other institutions, you can only get so many tries and access points to try to recover it, that it just shuts you off, and that's it. And if you think about banks, have you tried to move more than $10,000 out of your bank? Yeah, good luck.
Yes, as a matter of fact, I have, and it's not pretty what happens.
Right. So if it's brute force and you can keep going forever, then yes, quantum computing will do that. But if it's going to be 3, 5, 10 times, it's not going to happen. There's only so much you can do. And then people say, what about the nuclear codes, genius? Look, for nuclear codes, we can get the codes, but then you got people, first of all, it has to go through the president, whichever nation we're talking about here, has to actually give the order. People have to manually move things. So just because we have nuclear codes, per se, doesn't mean we're going to launch nuclear missiles. And then lastly, people say, what about AI? Couldn't that just do it? And then it could mimic Trump. I'm like, look, I don't know if Skynet's coming, probably, but that's not what we're talking about today. So we're just talking about if quantum computer is going to break Bitcoin. So the problem with Bitcoin there is that you got no human firewall. It's pure math. There's no customer support, no reversals. And it can target these accounts, these wallets, because it can, again, try to break the elliptical curve cryptography, and it can do it. The problem is we don't have the qubits. We have the physical, but the logical I just showed you. So the question you have to ask yourself, and I think what should have been asked by Chris Wood was, well, how many logical qubits do we have? How many do we need to actually break Bitcoin? We need 2,330 logical ones. Right now we got 12 to 48. The danger zone is 2330, but people say, well, Moore's law, it's going to keep going up. Here's Google IBM projections as far as 2030. We might have 100. So there's that. That means it's not going to worry, although there is something that you should worry about, like Jerry talked about, quantum resistance. That's true, but to migrate everything from the old wallets, and think of all the wallets that are out there for Bitcoin, but then to migrate to a new standard, think of all the different transactions we have to go through, and think of the cost of what it's going to be. And remember how high it went for Bitcoin transaction fees back in 2021. It's going to go pretty high, and it's going to take, some people say 30 days. That's not true. Some say 6 to 18 months, and some say 2 years. So to sum this all up, ignore anybody who says qubits and doesn't distinguish between physical and logical. You need 2,330 logical qubits to actually make this hum. And the current status is 48. So hopefully that made sense. Jerry, thoughts on this one?
Just a statement. If we get to the point where Bitcoin is threatened by quantum computing, everything is threatened by quantum computing. The deed to your property, your digital identification, every single thing in the digital realm is at threat to quantum computing and malice if in the wrong hands. So again, one of these problems I can't control, is way far away. I would rather be concerned about the dangers that I can be presented in the next week, next month, next 11 months. Get me through 2026, please. And then we can talk about the world ending with quantum threats.
Exactly right. My sphere of control is only so full. So everybody, tell me what you think about that in the comments section. We'll talk about this in Q&A if you want to. But then lastly, we got to bring up, if we're talking about quantum computing, we should talk about artificial intelligence and the massive costs that are going on with compute and everything else. And Jerry, looks like you're trying to combat that. Tell us about Compute Portal. What's going on?
Thanks. Yeah. Good. You know, I think I just put out that yesterday or this morning. I can't remember. I'm doing so much of this stuff. Compute Portal is this company I built when I left Hypercycle. Basically, in a word, we pool compute resources together and providers just like Uber pools drivers. So one person, a developer or somebody that needs compute, can create one user account on Compute Portal and have access to a cornucopia of resources with one deployment, which is really an advantage to developers because currently the traditional way is everything siloed, right? When you do your deployment with AWS, it's actually kind of a big deal to redeploy. And so they kind of get you, they lock you in and they keep you hostage to their pricing schedule. And because we can move quickly in the back end with one user front end, we can offer tremendous savings. And so we're going to launch officially January 27th, but we're already onboarding development teams right now. So, hey, folks, if you're a development team and you want to talk about your overhead and your compute costs, DM me or send a comment to that tweet there on X. I may be able to help you. I can definitely create savings if you're using AWS, DigitalOcean, Google Cloud, or Microsoft Azure. So the phone lines are open.
Sounds good. And I just want to remind everybody that I've got two things. First of all, the presentation we just talked about for computing, our quantum computing is there. And then it's the links in the description. And then also for Jerry, there's a link in the description for that tweet. And also full transparency, we'll probably be joining Jerry in this endeavor as we invest. And also we'll be pushing things over potentially from our Cardano stake pool. I'm just waiting for the tech team to iron it all out with Jerry. So that's it for today. So look, like today's video, thumbs up, subscribe, all that great stuff. And now you get to ask Jerry any question you want. And I get to ask Jerry. Okay. PHX says, I suspect that Jerry's behind the new tariff wars and wanting to conquer Greenland. You know, like, I'm not a big geopolitical guy, but it is interesting just to follow this. But I don't think it's about conquering Greenland and taking it. Although some people say, Rob, you're naive, and that's exactly what they want. They want the rare precious metals and da-da-da. Okay. But, I mean, Jerry, what's your thoughts as far as like conquering Greenland? And is this really a thing you think about?
So again, I'm not geopolitical either, but what I do know is that the future is everly increasingly more about technology. Yeah. And I know that chip construction takes certain kinds of raw materials. I know that energy production is got to be top on the list for anybody's expansionary goals, right? We need more electricity or power, right? Something that'll create electricity. And then those two things together, obviously those are commodity type elements, and somebody has to mine them, refine them, produce them, make them available in marketplaces. I mean, it's definitely a different game. We went from an expansionary period in the industrial age where it was about the cost of labor, right? Yeah. We saw the migration from the United States that had a very high cost of labor to countries like China and other Pan-Asian countries. And what we are now beginning to see is that the bottlenecks and constraints and cost structures are no longer labor number one, labor's number two or number three in most cases. It's actually raw material costs. That has become the quintessential top point. And so everybody who's building anything, whether it be Elon Musk and all the rockets, or NVIDIA and all their chips, or you name the power company that's trying to squeeze out another gigawatt of electricity to power a data center, everybody's trying to get this stuff and get their costs down because costs are exploding in every one of these sectors. And so commodities are at the heart and soul of that, or at least a certain section of the commodity sector.
Makes sense. Hey, Jerry, what's more important for you guys? Is it the chips or is it electricity, power, that type of thing.
I'll tell you, I think at the end of the day, Rob, electricity is going to be the governing factor because, for instance, I'm here in Costa Rica. I'm able to draw 5 cents a kilowatt hour from a hydroelectric plant being administered by the country of Costa Rica. Now, I don't know what your price per kilowatt hour in Puerto Rico is, but I did a survey on your cost in El Paso, Texas, and it was like 25 cents a kilowatt hour. So if you have the same device in El Paso, Texas, and I have the same device here in Costa Rica, and you're paying 20 cents a kilowatt hour, and I'm paying 5 cents a kilowatt hour, I can undercut you, provide the same exact output because my input costs are less.
Huh. Well, that makes sense, actually. If your input costs are less, it's the same thing with Bitcoin mining, right?
Exactly. It's exactly the same thing.
Yeah, that makes sense.
The same principle, right? Input costs versus output outcomes.
Yeah, and you know what? I would like to bring up, one thing as we're talking about, like, what's scarce, what's finite, what do we need for electricity and compute power, and like you just said, it's really going to be the benchmark's going to be electricity. We need to make more power much more handily. And then, of course, with that, if you need a bunch of power, well, what's the most important compound that you need for electrical components, especially to bring everything in and to cool everything down? And people would say, well, it's silver or it's gold for the chips and it's doing this. I'm like, no, you know what's crazy? It's copper. Copper. I put this, how long ago was this? January 8th, not too long ago. And the question was, here's the most important metals for AI compute growth. And it just kind of gives it's like copper, aluminum, iron, steel, silicon, time. And silicon it's a compound.
This is all true if it is physical delivery, right? So if the electrons are going over a wire, that's 100% true. There is an emerging technology where they're actually using light and rays of light on the light spectrum to convey information.
Oh yeah, information. Yeah. For information that makes total sense. Yeah.
And so if you reduce the amount of physical wire needed for a machine to talk to a machine, then all you have to concern yourself with the transmission of the electricity. And then how long will it take before we're able to do the old Tesla stuff, and that is transmit electricity over light waves?
Right.
I don't think that isn't being studied and researched and trying to figure that little gem out.
Right. And the reason that I bring this up about, because we talk about gold and silver and how important it is, of course, there's multiple uses, but, copper is the big thing. It's the same thing with crypto and altcoins. It's all about speculation and momentum. When you lose the momentum, people don't want to speculate on it anymore, and they go away. And this is what happens. So like with copper right now, there's not much of a speculation. Even though we know it's scarce, I will probably go up as time goes on. But I take a look at this and just say, this is the correlation between like copper, super important, need it. There's going to be a massive shortfall in 2030. It's already been written about in different publications, and people are ignoring it. But what do they not ignore? Gold and silver, because gold is being bought up massively by the central banks, most specifically in China. And of course, silver is going up as a precious metal and store of value and all that great stuff. So like that type of thing that's just how it is. And we'll get to the other stuff. All right. Bullish says tariffs screwed the bull market. How long have we been dealing with tariffs now?
I don't know if that's true. I think what screwed the bull market is the beginning of 2025, or at least started to create those cracks, right? And from a big bull market perspective, because keep in mind, we had an all-time high in Bitcoin in October. So it was just kind of the altcoin market that didn't get its bull run in early 2025, right? I think a lot of that goes back to, again, when new dynamics come into play, uncertainty is at its highest level, and markets don't like uncertainty, whether it's this way or that way. We want certainty. Which direction is it going to go, so that we can place our bets accordingly? And so there was a lot of uncertainty at the beginning of 2025. I think it's getting a lot clearer. Don't you?
I think it is. And then like, if we take a look at certain things, like, I don't think it's like, take a look at gold and silver. They're doing just fine. Take a look at the S&P 500. no problems. Take a look at the Mag 7. They're not having an issue. But as far as like screwing the bull market, as far as like tariffs, those don't seem to be affected too much. And when I take a look at like the other factors like M2 money supply, global and US, I take a look at rates and everything else, we're moving in the right direction. I mean, like I've said before, people say, well, we just need liquidity. I'm like, damn, how much do we need? I mean, quite honestly, look at this. This is the global M2. We're at an all-time high. That's the blue mark here. And then, of course, for the US, M2 money supply, again, all-time high.
The train ain't going to stop, my friend.
Yeah. Maybe when this PMI thing comes in, as far as, or excuse me, well, ISM PMI. But as I remember, manufacturing is only 11 to 13%. 70% is the economy, or 70% is services for the US economy. So like people are saying, well, once it gets above 50 and we're in expansion, all right, we'll see. We're at 48.2 as of November. I got to update that, but we'll see. How about this one? Hello, Loretta. That's it. That's the whole
Hello.
thing. Fran still says, hell yeah, we should have Greenland. I don't know if we should have it. It'd be nice to make another Commonwealth like my home, Puerto Rico. Just saying. Wow, that's interesting. A1 Rising says, I work with companies that actually pay tariffs. They can't pass it on to the consumer. 50% exporter pays, other 50% facts, not hearsay. That's interesting. Well, it makes sense, right? At some point, if you want to have a business and there's a competition, you can't start raising prices until somebody else raises too much. And then you can kind of go right
look at your own in-house cost structure, right? Where can you cut costs within your own doors? Ugh. That means salaries and jobs and stuff like that. Never fun.
Never fun. Here's a great question for AI. The bigger question is, are humans just becoming obsolete tech?
The ego inside of me says no.
The rational side of me says
the rational side says, you know what? Yeah, there's probably not a lot of value Jerry can bring that an AI couldn't bring in 2 years or 3 years.
No, exactly right. No, I'm telling you, there's going to be so many jobs that are going to be displaced coming up with AI. Like I said, like I built that website for the animal shelter, and I put in an AI agent, and it took me for me, just like the learning curve took probably a couple hours. And when I figured it out, it took me like 20 minutes, I think, to do all that stuff. And I'm trying to.
This is wonderful, by the way.
Yeah, I like it.
It's coming together. It's coming together. It's like it's almost a real thing.
It is like.
I know. I'm playing.
It's almost
I'm playing. Matter of fact, at the end of the show, I'm going to go see if you've got the crypto part worked out, because I'll send a donation.
The only reason I don't have anything outside of Bitcoin is because I'm waiting for the treasury of the shelter to sign up for Kraken, so I can put in all types of wallets and things like that.
Okay.
And people will say, well, why'd you pick Kraken? And why didn't you put them on a TANGEM? Like, look, I want to make it as easy for them as possible. So what I told them to do is, like I said, use the wallets in Kraken. You don't have to deal with, even though it's easy for me, you guys got a lot of people in structure who wants to be responsible for this. They're like, not me. I said, just take the donations as soon as you can, transfer them over to cash, put them into your bank account. If you want to be investors, which you guys are not, you're welcome to do it. But dogs need food. Dogs need shelter.
If they took 1% of all their Bitcoin donations and actually kept it in Bitcoin over a long period of time.
Well, I talked to him about it.
Like a treasury strategy.
Yeah, we can make it like a digital asset treasury, or it'd be a DDAT, a dog digital asset treasury, and then we just do it from there. Let's see. Money going to charity is always good. I think so. Sell the stock, and yep. AI guy says U.S. Mint up Silver Eagle 65%.
Wow.
What was holding silver and gold? Congratulations. That was a long hold to get to where you want to be today. And I think that's it. Dan the man says, so defund AI. That's never going to happen. If you're like getting out of Bitcoin, that's never going to happen either. Anyhow, that's it for today. So everybody, links in the description. Go check out what Jerry was talking about for compute. And I think that's it. Unless, Jerry, you got something else going on?
Yeah, I just realized I was looking at the www.compute portal. It's computeportal.io, not org. I don't know how that got there.
Well, that's why.
I don't know how to fix it though. It's not a. Well, I'll figure it out.
We'll figure it out. See, that's what you get with the startup.
One last point. Compute Portal was built with three humans, and a bunch of AI. It would have taken us a team of 12 a year ago.
Exactly. That's why.
To build the company that we built today.
You know what we got to do next week, Jerry? We're talking about AI. We need to talk about the crypto AI projects that make sense.
Okay. Let's do it. I'll do some homework.
All right. Everybody remind us in the comment section to do that. That's it for today, everybody. Thanks so much for stopping by. See you on next Sunday. Adios.